In this video, you're going to learn how to put together an Adirondack chair. You will need to use all of the tools that are in the shop in order to build this chair successfully. You will also need to use all of the cutouts that are hanging on the wall in order to build all the parts and pieces for this chair. I have all the parts and pieces underneath the table right now, and I will pull them out one at a time as we get going on them. You will also need to have on hand an impact driver, a drill, glue, all three versions of screws, except for pocket hole screws, a pencil, a tape measure, and a speed square in order to put this together. You are also going to need somebody's help at a couple of different spots throughout the project in order to make your life easier and the chair nicer. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to start with our arm assembly. You will have two pieces that are for the arm assembly, and you will also have what is called an upper back support. This is a piece that has a 30-degree cut on it, and it matches your arms exactly. How we are going to do this is we are going to assemble it upside down so that when we flip it over, it works, everything's all lined up. Now, what you should be doing is using your speed square and your pencil and making sure that everything is nice and square. If you do this right, your corners should all be the same because the cutout should match. Once you have your speed square marked on there, put a line. This is going to help you make sure everything stays in line. For this particular assembly point, we are going to use the 1¼ inch screws and wood glue. And we're also going to pre-drill the holes. Remember, when pre-drilling the holes, you never want the drill bit out longer than you absolutely need it to be. So after I mark my line here, we'll go ahead and take our board off. We're going to take a little bit of glue and put here, kind of smear it around like that. Put our board back on here. Line it up with our pencil mark, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to drill a couple of holes. One of the keys to making a nice product is doing little things like when you're putting the screws in the bottom of your arm, putting them in a nice, neat square. This will make sure that we have a good product that is to the best of our ability. Once we have one side done, we'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Again, we're using our speed square, keeping the ends flush. Okay, using our speed square to make sure everything's square. Once we get it where we want it, we put a mark. That way we can move it, add a little bit of glue. And then we can put it back together, making sure that everything stays where it's supposed to stay. We can also double check it again with our speed square, just to make sure if you don't like how things are. Always make sure and final check and double check everything before you put the screws in. This will make sure that you have a good product. Now, while we have this piece out, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our tape measure and we're going to mark 6 inches from the front side of the arm. And then we're going to use our speed square to transfer that mark across the inside of the arm and up the edge. This will aid us in the future when we go to establish or put these arms on our leg assemblies. Now we're going to set this aside for right now, and then we are going to start working on our leg assemblies. You're going to need these pieces will work to do this. These are your bottom legs. These are your leg supports. These are the seat support or leg supports that go on the inside. We're going to start by putting the backs of the leg pieces here together. These are 21.5 inches long. These are 8 7/8 cut at 22.5 degrees. We're going to go ahead and put 2 screws in here real quick. We're going to adjust our drill bit out. Then we're going to change the drill bits and grab our longer screws. When doing this, you want to make sure that the bottoms are even. And you also want to make sure that the sides are even. You only need to use 2 screws here. Again, making sure everything's nice and even as you put the screws in. Now we're going to go ahead and use one of our other 2x4s that's laying around as a support, and then we're going to make sure and align all of this as we put it together. So what we're going to do is we're going to line this top corner on our leg support with the vertical upright. We're also going to make sure that this cut right here, everything is all nice and plumb and even. We're going to take our drill again and we're going to drill 2 holes. And then we're going to go ahead and put our screws in. And then that's going to be one leg assembly. Now when you put the other one together, you have to remember the orientation at which this is, so that when this all comes together, it's going to line up the same way. Now we're going to grab one of the other pieces of 2x4 that we have so that we can align these corners doing the same thing. Again, making sure that the front edge and this top corner are aligned, and also this gap right here is nice and even. Again, we're only using a couple of screws. There's no need to have any more than that. Now, you should have 2 leg assemblies that look exactly like this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start assembling the base a little bit more. So we're going to put in the lower back support, which is going to mean that we need to change our drill bit one more time, and also change our bit out for the other side of the screws. This piece looks kind of like a smiley face. We're going to go ahead and do one side and then work our way to the other side. Just make sure everything stays in nice and in order. We want to make sure and keep our edges flush. So I'm going to line up one side, hold it in place. And when I'm doing this, I'm trying to make sure that I'm putting the screw in, as well as drilling into the center of the 2x6 and the center of the 1x6. This will be our best bet to keep everything from splitting. Again, lining it up, we're going to make sure that it's nice and flush right here. Now, to make sure that we keep everything nice and square, we're going to move over to the front of the chair, and we're going to start by installing seat slats here, and we're going to install about half of the seat slats. This will make sure that the leg assembly stays nice and square. This is going to be one of those steps where you're going to need somebody's help in order to be successful. The seat slats, they will be cut on the table saw at 25 inches. Or on the miter saw at 25 inches, and then they will be cut down on the table saw at 1 5/8 inches. So there's a couple of options you have here. Okay, what we're going to do right now is I'm going to pre-drill this piece on the table. I'm going to get 2 screws started. And then we're going to go ahead and install it onto the leg assemblies. Again, start on one side, making sure that the outside edges are flush. And then going over to the opposite side and keeping the outside edge flush. When you start this first one, it also needs to be flush with the bottom of the leg assembly. Now that we have the bottom assembly started, we're going to continue on and do about half of these legs. We're going to use our speed square as a spacer. So we'll put that speed square in there like this. It creates a spacer. Again, always make sure that you start on one side, make sure it is flush, and then move to the other side. Now, if you did your math right, and you were able to measure correctly, and cut on the right side of the line correctly, all of your edges on each side should be nice and flush. once you got about half of them in, you need to stop because we're going to allow access for a drill and impact driver when we put in the back sides. We're now going to move on and put the upper arm supports on. These are very short pieces that are cut at a 45. You'll need your teacher to do these for you because there's no way to safely clamp them onto the miter saw. We're going to go ahead and put these on the top here, making sure they're flush here and down the sides. And when you put these on, you're going to want to make sure and put your screws offset like this to keep it from splitting. You're going to need a clamp to help hold these in place. Adam, give me a clamp. And when we put this clamp on, you want to be able to clamp right here in between the two pieces so that you can put your both screws in without removing the clamp. Take your time, line it up right. Go ahead and tighten your clamp up. You've got plenty of room there to do that. We're going to go ahead and drill through this. These are back to 2x4s. We're going to extend our drill bit. And we're also going to have to change bits because we're using the longer 2.5-inch screws when we put two 2x4s together. We'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Now that we've got our arm supports up, we're going to go ahead and put our arms across the top of this. This is where having an extra hand is going to come in very handy. So, Rafe, come up and help hold this, please. This is where having the lines on the front of that we put on earlier helps hold everything in place. You hold that, Rafe. Now, because we're going to put some holes in here again, we're going to go ahead and change our drill bit. Now change our impact driver bit. Because we're going to use 1 3/4 screws to go in a nice square pattern at the top. Now once he has it held in place, even on both sides, we're going to go ahead and add 1 screw on one side. And get it held in place. I'm going to double check the other side. We're going to add 1 screw on the other side. Now that will hold it in place while you put the other remaining screws in here. Again, you're going to use 4 screws in a nice square pattern. Now that we have the arm support on, we're going to take a little bit of time and take some measurements and figure out where the center of the back supports are. This will help us when we put on the back slats to make sure that we're starting right in the middle and that everything stays nice and square. So you want to go ahead and find the center of this, which is going to be right around 11 1/8 of an inch, or 11 1/4, excuse me. Excuse me, 10 3/4. And then we're going to go down here, we're going to get half of 25. Half of 25 is 12 1/2. And this will allow us to go ahead and line up our back slats in a nice even manner. Now your back slat pieces are 32 1/2 inches long. They're cut on the table saw to create a nice tapered pattern like this, and then rounded on the melt and disc sander. Now in order to do this, we're going to go ahead and start right here in the middle. We're going to start with the middle one up towards the top of the lower back support, so that we can create a nice arc pattern as we go. So we'll start by putting this lower screw in, and you can see this is why we wanted to stop and only put half of our back slats in, so we had room for that drill and stuff on the edge. Now it's very important when you're doing this to make sure that you're putting your screws and everything in the correct angle so that it's going into the wood. You can screw up very easily and get screws that are going not directly into the wood. So take your time, make sure you're lining everything up. Now, from here on out, you're going to work successively on each side of the center. There should be a total of 7 by the time you're done. And you're going to use your speed square, possibly 2 if you need to, one on each of the back supports, in order to keep your spacing even. You're also going to want to bring each one down about 1/2 of an inch, so it looks something like this in a nice even pattern as we go. So I will use my speed square, put up here like this, and then I'll go ahead, get it where I like it, tree drill it, get a screw started. Okay, and here's where you have to work, okay, slowly and steadily to make sure that you make a nice product. So we'll go ahead and get that screw started, but we will not put it in too tight, so we can still move the top of the back slat back and forth just a little bit in order to make sure that we can line everything up. tricks that might help you when doing this, if you cannot hold things and drill them at the same time, is go ahead and get it held up here about where you want it. Use your pencil and put a mark where you want to pre-drill it. Then you can take your back slat off. You can pre-drill, get a screw started while it's on the table. And then you can go ahead and get it held up here back in the spot where you want it. And then all you have to do is worry about putting the screw into the back slat. Once we get these pieces on, you should have something that looks like this. Most of our screws should be in a nice straight line as we come across, okay? And you should, now that you have this piece done, you can work on finishing putting your seat slats in all the way down to the edge. Now that we have all the seat pieces on, this part of the chair is done. The last thing we need to do is add the rear support structure, and that is going to go on the back, coming from here down to these legs. They're going to be these shorter pieces. They are 20 inches long, and they're cut at a 22.5-degree angle. We're going to go ahead and do this by clamping right here, and then putting 2 screws in here and 2 screws in here. The easiest thing to do is to go ahead and lightly snug this up so that you can still move that 2x4 around, and you want to get it so it's nice and flush with the back side here, so that there's plenty of room for the screws to go in. On the top screws, we're going to use 1 3/4 screws. On the bottom screws, we're going to use 2.5-inch screws. So we'll start by putting in the top 2. And then we'll switch bits, extend our drill bit slightly, and do 2 on the bottom. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move to the other side so this camera can still see what's going on. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. And we're going to make sure that it's lined up even on the bottom. Then use our clamp to hold everything in place. We'll go ahead and do the bottom ones first on this one. And then we will go ahead and do the top 2 real quick. Switch bits again, and again using the 1 3/4 screws on the top. Now, the last thing that you'll have to do is to go ahead and finish sanding any of the rough edges on your chair, but that is what your chair should look like when you're completely done. Please refer back to the video as much as you need to in order to see how it's done. Thank you.